Well, I'm always taking videos outside, but I thought just for once you might like to see a video from inside my hotel room. Now, hotels that don't charge a single room supplement are usually those that do have a few literally single rooms. I call them punishment rooms because I always think they're a hangover from the days of the old commercial travellers and that kind of thing, you know, coach drivers get stuck in the attic kind of thing. But this is a basic room. It's comfortable, the bed's comfortable, don't get me wrong, it's got basically everything you need, but as you'll see in a moment, everything except a view. We've got this tool cupboard here, pretty standard. You've got the standard desk, TV, mirror, call it what you like, that's fine. Nice, I guess leather or leather effect chair that you sink into when you sit in it, which is not something you've got to get used to. Single bed, quite comfortable. Small chest of drawers, and then you come into the bathroom. Very basic here, and no shower, a bath. Most people don't use a bath these days, they need a shower, especially to wash their hair, but and here is my room with a view. Excuse me, a view of the sloping roof opposite. Now, you can see the mountains if you come round and squeeze yourself down, but my next trip out to Scotland, hopefully to Scotland, is I've had to pay quite a bit extra as the punishment fee for being a single person, but if I only get a single room there, I shall complain bitterly, because you normally pay a supplement where you're going to be using a double room, but only as a single person. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But I understand that most hotels now that are being built, they don't have single rooms anymore, they're all doubles, and that's why if you're single through no fault of your own like I am, you're always going to be stung extra. I can understand it from the hotel's point of view that it's potentially losing revenue, but then on the other hand, why should somebody be punished just because they're living on their own, you know? Certain things don't seem right. Anyway, I just thought you'd be interested to see that. And yes, it's very basic, but then if all you're doing is coming in here to sleep, I don't suppose you need much more, do you? We're travelling once more along beside the Droichead. Doesn't seem to take very long from that narrow, almost stream we saw in the previous video of the bridge up at Tan-y-Bwlch, till it starts to open out here into that huge estuary that we see down at Portmadoc. You'll see how we're travelling beside it now, but in a moment or two, as we come to the end of this clip, you'll see it just turn round to the left there as we look at it now. It's just turning round to the left between the hills where it really begins to open up. And we've just by this small archway here. There's a train coming, there we go, just on the left hand side. You're up higher than me, so you'll get better view.
Going past it now, there you go. There's a dinky one, that's called Blanche.
And before we continue on our journey, it's probably worth saying a little bit about Portmadoc. Now, William Maddox was a local landowner, farmer, and what you see here in this picture didn't exist prior to 1800 or so. It was actually a little rocky outcrop in the vast, and I do mean vast, estuary, joint estuary if you like, as I've previously mentioned, the rivers Glaslyn and Doirid. And he came up with this idea of building a dike, a sea wall, which was called the Cob, to reclaim a lot of the land north of it for farming, etc. But in doing so, and in diverting the course of the Glaslyn, he created a deep water port. You just see the water in the back of these couple of pictures. It'll change slightly in a moment. Although you'd hardly think there was a thriving seaport here, would you, at one time? But there you go, the rise and fall of the Welsh slate industry. And all the rocks and everything excavated from constructing the Cob was used to build the Boston Lodge ground at the other end, and to form the land that you see now, which eventually grew up to become Portmadoc as we know it today. Not much more can be said, I suppose, really. We then had the arrival of the slate trade, and with it came the Festiniog Railway, which is actually the oldest surviving railway company in the world. Originally it worked on the principle that horses would take the empty slate wagons back up to the quarries at Blanche, and they would be worked down by gravity because it's a continual downhill gradient, with men sitting on the slate wagons acting as brakesmen, which was a very precarious job to say the least, and it did result in a number of dreadfully bad injuries and death over the years. The ocean-going slate business virtually finished at the end of the First World War, because the last big outlet was to the German building industry. That of course naturally finished during the First World War, and gradually the rest of the slate traffic fell into decline until the railway closed in 1946 and lay in a semi-derelict state until revived by the pioneers of preservation in 1954, and has expanded to the big business that you see here today. Officially became Britain's first narrow gauge passenger carrying railway in 1865, but it had been unofficially carrying passengers for a number of years before that. Famous for its double fairley, double fairleys they call them. Basically, it was a locomotive designed by Fairley, which had twin boilers, but it was articulated pony trucks, which means that you could have a very powerful locomotive that's capable of going around some very tight turns, as existed in the Festiniog Railway. We will see one of those in a few minutes as we pass Boston Lodge. That basically is just, well, a potted history of Portmadoc and the beginnings of the Festiniog Railway. Sorry if that's bored some of you, but I do know that there are folk out there that like a little bit of the added history, and of course I've had time to sit and have a look at it, refresh my memory and add some more information. Ooh. Here we go. Here we go then, out onto the cob. Now you see what a vast expanse. This was known as Portmadoc. It still is known as Portmadoc, but it's been cut in two by the cob. We'll see some photos of the other side and some video on the way back on our journey. You can see Boston Lodge works in the distance there. They, believe it or not, it's the oldest, longest surviving locomotive works serving its original company. There's one of the double fairlies I mentioned. 7. Change the token. This is where we hand back the token from the single track section from Portmadoc to here at Bwlch, and we accept the token giving us the right to travel up to the next block at Tan-y-Bwlch. Passing through the next station up the line, you'll see the running in board said Penryn. Well, actually this is a town with a longer name. It's Tan-y-Bwlch. Not quite the right pronunciation, perhaps Tan-y-Bwlch would be better. And we're passing over the famous level crossing now. And from what I can gather, the lady that lived near the crossing, or next to it, opened these gates for many, many years. She was quite famous, like the lady at Tan-y-Bwlch station, who always used to dress when she was station mistress on duty in full Welsh costume. And we pass across to Choice-Walkumentaries and over the Choice-Walkumentaries embankment to some of these next views. Into Tan-y-Bwlch station. Tan-y-Bwlch, I hear you say? That sounds familiar. Morning, Jones. Morning, Ivor. Morning, Dye Station. Now you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Oh, that's lovely.
We're passing Tan-y-Bwlch, and you see at this point we are quite high up. We're on quite a narrow ledge on the mountainside, and just about to pass into the short but very dark Garnaith tunnel, which comes as quite a surprise to those who aren't expecting it. There in the distance, on the other side of the Vale of Festiniog and the Dwyrid, is the little village of Tan-y-Bwlch, which you remember you've seen we passed through in the previous video.
Yes, I think they need to up here and get things down. It's the old one.
Whoa, steady on girl, steady on. Slipping a bit there. That's a sound that should fill most drivers and past firemen with dread. Wheel slip. Too much power for the situation. Maybe the track suddenly got a bit slippery, or as is so often the case, the driver or past fireman being allowed to drive is maybe a little bit too enthusiastic and puts a bit too much power on. In this case I don't know what it was. The track certainly didn't look damp. It may well be that whoever was driving simply forgot the weight of the extra diesel locomotive behind it. Either way, wheel slip can be very serious, and as you saw here, you end up virtually going nowhere with the wheel spinning. That can cause damage to the locomotive. He got out of it very quickly, full marks to him. Today's line, as you can see, curves away to the right in the distance there. The original went straight on, and we've just come up the spiral, the only one on the British narrow gauge, and a credit to the volunteers called the deviationists who built it. Back at Tan-y-Bwlch now, and a selection of photographs of the different types of carriages. The red one there was a workman's coach looking down the platform of our train. Tan-y-Bwlch station. Or Tan-y-Bwlch. Just a quick word about Blanche and Linda, her sister. When the Penryn quarry system closed in 1961, they were both rescued by the Festiniog. Had a bit of work done on them since, mainly improving the cab arrangement. Blanche was the first locomotive that I travelled behind on the Festiniog way back in 1967. And nice to see the old girl still looking so good. Well, we're running back onto the Cobb now, just passing Boston Lodge Works, and you can see the other side of the divided Choice-Walkumentaries. Now you see how vast it was, and also the big, I think that's the cement works up at Portmadoc, and you see how the glaslin has created a curving path for itself up towards the Glaslin Pass there. But here is what William Maddox intended to create: large areas of reclaimed agricultural land, mainly for grazing. And look, the cows and the sheep, and I tell you, Welsh lamb from these salt marshes is the sweetest, most beautiful lamb you will ever taste. There's also egrets breeding here. It's 30 years ago somebody said, egret? We don't have them things in the UK, they're all over the place now. And also, this is the land of ospreys. I was privileged enough to see a couple while we were travelling one day, but this is where you will very often find them. And hard to believe that all this was under the sea at one time. The Cobb, of course, much strengthened in more recent years, particularly at the Portmadoc end, where there had to be a bit of work done by the Festiniog Railway to make it wide enough for the Welsh Highlands to rejoin it. And there's the mountains of Snowdonia in the distance. What a lovely view from the train window, isn't it? And as we journey back in the coach, just a few more stills looking towards the Aberglaslyn Pass. Stunning scenery, of course, but then I'm biased. Passing Boston Lodge Halt, and a quick word about this place. This is the exchange sidings at Minforth. You can see the single British Railways platform on the right, and this was where slate that wasn't destined for the docks would go round. There's a long loop and drops down where you see the railway there, and on certain days the railway runs demonstration slate trains from Thiach down into those sidings. And we finish with a very quick look at Minforth before I see you again on the seafront in Abermawr.
Hello folks, it's the last evening here, so I thought I'd come out and have a sit and listen to the waves. As you could probably hear, the sea is starting to get a bit rougher, so we've got some weather moving in. But it's been a lovely week. I've been to some great places, travelled on a couple of trains, which anybody who knows me knows that I thoroughly enjoyed. I have an apology to make, and that is that I didn't go into the centre of Abermawr, Barmouth. Had a bit of a problem this week with the old, I don't know whether it's the heart or, I think I've had a slight upper respiratory tract infection, but I'm getting out of breath a little bit easily, so I haven't been able to walk down to the town centre and back. It's just been too far, so sorry about that. But apart from that, I hope you will have enjoyed the footage that I have taken. I'm always at home here. The contrast between every twist and turn never ceases to amaze me. You turn one way and you're on a lovely wide estuary or bay, sandy beach, beautiful. And you turn another way and you're in a river valley, and you don't see much water trickling down, but the boulders that are in there just bring home the sheer force of the water, and you think, they've been deposited there over hundreds of years probably, but could just as easily have come down on the last big storm. It's one of the amazing things. Do you know, I thought I just heard a rumble of thunder. I did hear a rumble of thunder. I wonder if you heard it too. Well, it just goes to show, doesn't it? But I've had a good week. It's been a relaxing week. We go home all too soon. And, as you probably saw from the video I took earlier of the room, bit of a basic room. I honestly can't say it's the best hotel I've stayed at. The girls who do the come around asking if you want a drink with your meal seem to have routinely ignored me, probably because I'm on my own and not buying oodles of glasses or bottles of wine every night. But there you go. Off to Scotland next week, Strathpepper. So one can only hope that I'll find things a bit better up there. I'm certainly looking forward to it because, unlike North Wales, it's a place I haven't been to. So that should be quite exciting and a voyage of discovery for us all. So on my way home tomorrow, straight down the motorways, service station stops. There'll be no video for that, it's just simply not worth it. So I will now say goodbye from Abermawr, and we'll see you in Scotland. Well, probably Grange over Sands first, because that's where we're stopping on the way up. Bye for now.